Kia ora koutou, no mai hoki mai ki te Flight of the Next podcast. We are back again today with a very special guest who's coming to us from the east coast of the mighty US of A. And so before we progress, we'll just do a quick round. So if you've been watching a little while, you know that I'm Jonathan, based here in Rotorua, fan of the Knicks. And I also have my New York, New Jersey, Gotham scarf right here, which hangs on my wall in my office. So, yeah, so that's kind of a little bit of a preview to what we're going to be talking about today. Also on the call, we've got our friend Denise, who's also from the US, both East Coast and West Coast, who's now living in Taupo, and Holly, who's I think she's originally from the center of the North Island, but is currently over in Brisbane, ahead of the game this week. So we have got with us today Jen. Jen is a part of Cloud9. Cloud9 are the supporters group for the Gotham FC, which is the New Jersey, New York women's team in the NWSL. They went from last in 2022 to winning the league in 2023. And in the current off-season, they are buying up anyone and everyone that they can to ensure that they go for another run at their championship next year. But we'll just kind of leave there and we'll just, Jen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Jen Muller. I'm a board member for Cloud9, as you said, the supporters group for Gotham. I'm also a member of the Empire Supporters Club, which is a supporters group for the New York Red Bulls.
Good on you. So, hi, Jen.
Hey,
Fellow New Yorker here. I was born in
nice.
Poughkeepsie up the Hudson River. Um, you know, it's been a pretty exciting year for you. Tell us, but let's go back. We're a supporters club with the Flight of the Knicks, and Holly's part of a supporters club called Little Corner of Yellow. Um, Actually, interestingly enough, Flight of the Knicks refers to this show about New York and Kiwis called Flight of the Conchords. I don't know if you ever heard of that show.
I've watched it, yes.
So it's kind of a nod to New York meets New Zealand there. Um, but what is your role with the team? Like, what does a board member do? What does all that mean? And what is a
Um,
supporters group even?
yeah, so a supporters group is a lot of things. Part social club. Some people like to call us a booster club, but we're not. I don't know. I don't like that term. We're the people that make noise. We're the people that create atmosphere at games. Drums, singing, sometimes brass instruments, banners, tifo, flags, all of that.
What's a TIFO?
So a tifo is basically a display. Um, we have regular banners that hang all game, but a tifo is usually a larger display. Like ours are about 40 feet by 50 feet. Um, Usually done before the game. It takes us sometimes a couple weeks to do, and it's hung for a few minutes. Um, but it's basically just a large display. Some teams also do card stunts, like if you ever see people holding up like creating a mosaic or something like that. But it's basically a display.
Jonathan?
I had to ask Denise a few months ago what's a TIFO, and when I saw one, and it was one of the Gotham ones and had like the Statue of Liberty hand with the flame, I was like, wowzers, those are huge. And then then someone did like the making the background, and it was in this giant warehouse, and there are people everywhere, and there's painting. And when it goes up in the stadium, wow, 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 just incredible.
What do you do with them? And also, I'm just curious, like, that's probably a fair amount of money in terms of paint and organization. So, what goes on behind the scenes there?
Yeah, so we have we call it our three-headed tifo crew monster. There's three of us that do the design, and the prep work, and then we have folks that come in and help sketch it out and do the painting. We used to work at the stadium, but now we work at my office, which has some warehouse space. Not quite as big as, say, like Portland has, but we have a good amount of space, and it can get expensive. But you know, we do a lot of mixing of our own paints and stuff, so we're not, you know, because that's pretty much most of the expense. We do it all ours on plastic, which we're actually looking to find a resource to recycle them instead of just trashing them. So.
Oh, so they're on like a light sort of trash bag kind of plastic? Or
It's
something
on like a
heavier?
6 mil. It's 6 mil. Sorry, it's 6 mil plastic we get from Home Depot. It's like a 20 foot by 100 foot sheet that we cut in half and glue together. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, how do you get into the match?
Somebody with a, you know, a large trunk or SUV, and then we have rigging at the stadium. There's a large like a 40-foot pole that, you know, we tape it to, and yeah.
Nice. And did the team help you out with the rigging or?
It's part of Red Bull Arena. I mean, you know, it's part of whatever cost that Gotham pays for rental. Part of the reason why we moved our production out of the stadium, because we learned that the team was getting charged every night we were there. So, I mean, it could end up being several $1,000s. So we didn't really want that onus on us. So we, you know, my boss lets us work for free. So.
That's cool. And so our supporters group just like groups that like sing and yell and drum? I mean, is there any other sort of dimension to them?
Yeah, we try to do community outreach as well. You know, there's certain things that we do every year. Like we just announced a couple of days ago, we take $1 from every membership dues, plus additional donations that folks make. And at the end of the year, we donate that to the Players Association.
How many members do you have?
We have about 200.
A fairly large group.
We have 200. Not all of them are in the section. We have folks throughout the stadium. We have folks throughout the country. We even have some international members.
And what's your sort of regular active group turnout for a game?
I'm not good at estimating numbers, but maybe between 50 and 100. I don't know. I'm on one of the drums, so I really don't see what's behind me.
I mean, look, for comparison, you know, there's not quite so many of us. So the New South Wales supporters group that I'm involved in, we're called the Little Corner of Yellow because we're this often. I'm going to a match that's in Brisbane on up here on Sunday, and it's probably going to be me as like the active support. I know there's other fans going because there's some parents and whatnot. So that's pretty awesome. Do you think that's sort of comparable to the other supporters groups that are over there in the NWSL, or are some bigger, some smaller?
There's quite a few that are bigger, especially with the newer teams. You know, and I've seen this on the MLS side as well, where you have the 1.0 teams that carry a lot of baggage, that sometimes it's harder to get that push, where the shiny new teams are getting a lot more traction in media and what have you. So I mean, we started with maybe 30 people signed up the first year, with maybe 10 people in the section regularly, if that. So, I mean, we've come a long way. But, you know, we're not Portland size, but honestly, that's okay. You know, you do, and it's okay to have multiple supporters groups as well. Like, we'd be open to, if another group started up, that's fine. But, you know, we try not to compare ourselves to other groups. You know, we just focus on what we're doing, because it's the community that matters. You know, sometimes groups go too big too fast, and you can lose the plot, you know. We want everyone to be safe and comfortable. If that means growing slowly, then we grow slowly.
And do you have big rivalries with the other supporter groups? I feel like so for the A-League women, there's no real rivalry, even when there's like a regular rivalry between the men's clubs, because most of the women's clubs are attached to a men's club. There's only one standalone club, which is Canberra United. People are pretty friendly with each other, but I have heard that there's some quite big actually intense rivalries between some. Do you guys have a rival?
Probably with the Spirit, because they're our closest team right now. I mean, Boston's going to be coming in a couple years, or a year or two, maybe next year, or 2 years. But definitely the Spirit Squadron, and now Rose Room Collective, just because of our proximity. 1 year when they were playing at a smaller venue called the Plex, I remember we had an 8-hour tailgate with them because of a rain delay. We were just so I mean, it's a rivalry, but we're good friends with them.
So can you tell us a little bit about roughly sort of the history of Sky Blue and Gotham? You don't have to go that far into it, but I know that it used to be called Sky Blue. It won the first competition, and then there were some issues, and it was rebranded.
Yes, so Sky Blue started in the WPS, which was the league before the NWSL. And they did win the first championship in that league. And then when the NWSL started, they joined that first year. Yeah, I mean, we played at a college stadium at Rutgers, with the max capacity of maybe 5,000. But, I started going to games regularly in 2015, and that's when I joined Cloud9, which was just one other person, basically. And yeah, it was rough going. I mean, the only really good thing you could say was that the pitch was nice, had good grass, but the locker rooms were atrocious, no air conditioning, no showers. Yeah, it just wasn't a great venue. Not at all near any sort of public transportation. I mean, we're a regional team, we're New York and New Jersey. So, yeah, it was rough. And then Sam Kerr spoke up in 2018 after she left, made just a couple comments to the press after a game, and they started, some journalists started investigating and just found, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, set the scene. So Sam Kerr playing for Sky Blue, playing at Rutgers University. Team's not doing great. She's still a star. I mean, she can score 4 goals in one match, as she did for Sky Blue. But set the scene. So there's a lot of issues going on. And
Yeah.
What we want to know is, like, when things aren't good, what is the role of the supporters? Like, what happened with you and this other person who were like suddenly reading these articles, that either Dan Naletta or some other journalists were writing about some of the conditions?
I mean, the first thing we do is, we question our contacts in the front office. I mean, the front office was tiny at that point, but at that point we lost all trust in the general manager at the time. And once more stuff came out, we basically created a pipeline directly to the players. So we wanted to make sure whatever message we were sending out was truthful, was their truth. Because a lot of times, players can't really, there's no guaranteed contracts. They can't speak out publicly. So we wanted to be sure we knew what was going on from a player level and then advocate from there. And one of the things that stuck with us at the end of the season, our goalkeeper at the time, Kaylin Sheridan, made a comment. I believe it was a Howard Megdal article in Forbes, basically saying that she hopes that, this story doesn't get lost. So we kind of took that and ran, and the entire off season, every week, we had a weekly rant on Twitter, just pushing and pushing for the ownership in the front office to do something. And a week base, I mean, it was right before the season was about to start. They finally did.
Do something about, can you be more specific?
About one, we wanted the general manager out of there because he was just denying everything. You know, like he was still trying to spin things.
Yeah.
You know, we wanted to make sure players had better accommodations. I mean, they were living in beach houses, host families. You know, rookies would be put into a beach house, and then, you know, once that the owners are ready to come back, you know, they had to leave. You know, it was we want to make sure their training facilities were you know, up to standards, that kind of stuff. But the most thing was just, you know, getting leadership in there that was going to do something.
Yeah. I mean, I remember those times. I was in the States following, you know, this story.
Was there a consequence? Obviously, Cloud9 has a lot of help from the club in terms of being allowed in, setting up. So you've got like that the club has to have the goodwill to give you, or the relationship to give you, say, access to the stadium and stuff like that. Could be quite easy to push out a supporters group or punish a supporters group. So did that happen at all?
No.
Wow. I'm surprised.
We were most vocal once the season ended. And we were, many of us hadn't renewed our season tickets. So we were trying to use that leverage. We were still deciding on what to do for that home opener. You know, when the general manager was finally let go. But we knew we had the leverage because we had not only other Sky Blue fans with us, we had other groups in the league and other groups even in men's leagues with us as well. So I think we definitely had the leverage.
That's good. One of the things that's been a great deal of discussion over here in Australia and New Zealand with the A-Leagues has been fan involvement. And one thing that happened was late last year, the league decided to, and we can talk about this because I know that the NWSL does it in a certain way, but basically over here, the grand final is not set in one place and in advance. The team has to earn the grand final. So you can earn the grand final and that's at home. And that's been the case forever. The league unanimously decided to stop that, and they sold the grand final off to Destination New South Wales, meaning that for the 3 years it would be based in Sydney, and it didn't matter whether Perth earned a grand final or Wellington earned a grand final, it was going to be in Sydney. And fans were very angry that had been sprung upon them. And then there were these protests, some of which were effective, some of which were counterproductive. And in the end, the leagues decided to set up fan representation groups for each club, and then a central one. And that's still underway at the moment, developing that. But that is something that has been quite a point of discussion and contention within the A-Leagues about what power fans actually have. So when I say A-Leagues, I mean both the men and the women. So I'm glad to hear that you guys managed to push out a GM, because GMs have incredible power in a club. Are there fan representative groups across the league? How do you guys communicate with each other? Is there a chat group? Do you meet?
So this is great timing because we're a part of something called the Independent Supporters Council, which is comprised of supporters groups across the US and Canada. And that's women's league, you know, NWSL, USLW, men's leagues, MLS, you know, USL, also all tiers of the men's league. And we actually have we have an annual conference that's coming up in a couple weeks. We'll be going to Montreal this year. And that's sort of like, we kind of describe it as like basically a union for supporters groups. There's a board for the ISC, and they have contact within all the leagues. So if we have an NWSL issue or question, we can go to the ISC board. They will contact their NWSL reps. And there's 2 reps from each supporters groups that decides to join. So, and we chat in our Slack as well. So if something comes up within the league, we have an NWSL channel and we discuss it amongst ourselves, and then take any action from there.
That's really awesome. I mean, I love unions, and that sounds like a really democratic and powerful way to go about things. What counts as a supporters group, though? Because that's been one other thing that's been a matter of discussion and contention here. And by the way, the protest that the fans did also made the change. So they eventually, after one season, scrapped the grand final deal, and it's now become a unite round where every team is playing a match this coming weekend, and that is within Sydney. But yeah, what counts as a supporters group? Because there's the main supporters group, the main home supporters group for most teams, right? So the Yellow Fever is the Wellington-based supporters group that does the men and the women. We're sort of not competing supporters groups, the Little Corner of Yellow and Flight of the Nix. But you do wonder whether do you have to have a name and an identity, or do you have to have a certain size? Like, who gets a seat at the table?
That's a great question that has ever-evolving answers. For ISC, the word independent carries a lot of weight. So groups must be independent of their front offices, meaning financially, and that's not saying that your team can't help you financially in some ways, but I think we actually have a percentage of the money that comes in, can't, a cap on the percentage. So that being independent from the front office is first and foremost. Other than that, I mean, we have groups that have 10 people in it. We vote on who comes into who we allow as members. And it's not necessarily size. We have provisional stuff too. It's not necessarily size, but it's what's your aim as a group. If you're just a social club, I mean, that's not really a supporters group. It's for me, it's having active in-stadium support.
And is there a national sort of individual supporters group? So there's a Football Supporters Association of Australia just got set up in the wake of that grand final agreement debacle, and that's an independent one that you can sign up individually, so it's not based around supporters groups. Is there something like that in the States as well?
Are you saying tied to club or
no,
national team?
Entirely, not national team, just anyone. So their idea was any football supporter, whether you support the national team, whether you support the men's or the women's clubs, if you're involved in the semi-pro level, grassroots, just basically anyone who considers themselves a football supporter, that they can join as individuals and they would have a representation and sort of a seat or a voice at the table.
Not that I'm aware of. It's basically club and country here is separated, and everything's within its own league, aside from ISC, which is an independently run. You don't have to join ISC. It's an independently run organization.
All right, I'm going to just shift it a little bit more towards the women's game. Gotham FC is a women's team, with its own ownership. What do you know about supporters group in the women's game? And, here in New Zealand and Australia, they've been pretty adamant that a women's team go with a men's team. And that's the movement with any new team coming into the league. Just a few just a few thoughts on, that and our supporters group different in the women's side than the men's side.
Yeah, so we have a handful of teams that have a men's side as well. Portland, North Carolina, Houston, Orlando. I mean, you kind of find that the men's team always gets preferential treatment. A lot of times they have shared staff, which can be detrimental. If you don't have your own ticketing people, ops, what have you, you're always going to be I should say you're usually going to be a second thought. As far as their supporters groups, there's not a blanket statement I can make. I mean, Portland is huge. Their supporters groups are under one umbrella, which I guess has its advantages. The other ones have their own kind of separate, are separate from each other. As for the types of support, as we were saying before, I think the women's game is there's a lot less tribalism. We banter. I don't know if I can curse here, but we shit talk. But there's lines that we don't cross. And when somebody's in trouble, we support them. I'm one of the admins for our social media, and every once in a while there'll be a picture of our tifo, and there'll be empty seats behind it. It's no secret that we haven't had great attendance. And once in a while, it's usually a man comes into our mentions and says something about attendance, and I look at their profile, I'm like, oh, okay, they also support an MLS team, where attendance, shit talk is very common. And I almost don't have to say anything because people who, if somebody from Portland, people who are Thorns fans will come and shoot this person down. It's like, we don't do that here. They recognize that, we all need to get better attendance. Like, shit talking somebody about attendance isn't going to solve anything. That's low hanging fruit. So you really don't get that kind of talk and what have you in the women's game.
I think that there's a real sense among all women's football fans that like the growth of the game and the good of the game as a whole ultimately comes before that tribalism. And it's because we're still like it's getting better, but it's been an existential fight for a long time with women's football, teams folding, leagues. I mean, you guys went through quite a few leagues at one point because they kept folding. So that's something that I really like about women's football. Like, if you can walk into anybody's active, no matter how angry you are about a certain call or a certain match, and that's still at the end of the day the main thing. Do you think that the league is pretty healthy as it's growing? It does sound like, I mean, people are spending good money on teams and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just with the sponsorships coming in, the television deals, yeah, I'm not worried about this league going away anytime soon.
Let's rewind the clock a little bit.
Okay.
One of the reasons it's healthy now is that it's gone through some reckonings. It's just, we've talked to even players who've played for New Zealand who had teammates who played on teams in America who were there during when the Yates report came out and the U.S. soccer, I'm sorry, the NWSL Players Association report, even Sky Blue turning to Gotham. I mean, you got a new GM, but then it got tricky. I mean, there's a lot of triggering stuff in the women's game. And I've said it before, it's easy to be triggered as a women's fan because you've seen a lot of things and, over the years that are frankly inappropriate or squashing or, that a little bit blackmail-ish in that, the league will fold if, something will come out. Just take us a little bit through time with with Cloud9 and what your journey's been with those years.
Yeah, I mean, I think starting out, you always you want to be optimistic. You want to believe that you should trust certain people who are in charge. And then like, our dealings in 2018 leading into 2019 with, like we were saying, you know, y- you kind of find out the ugly truth and you lose faith in people. Then somebody else comes in and that seems okay, this is turning around, and then that turned to shit. Um, there was a lot for us, personally. We had two people who were involved with Sky Blue Gotham that had were prominently named in those reports. Um, and that hurts not just for, our own dealings with them, but for the players that endured that and that we had no idea. I mean, I kind of felt like we almost went on an apology tour, like just, had we known, we would have said something, and it's just you feel horrible. Um, uh, League wide, not just for our team, but for others as well. Now, and I think that's part of the turnaround at Gotham is that they focus first on creating a safe environment.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this a million times on our own pod that if the players aren't safe, then, why bother doing any of this? And I think the tricky part is, often these things are confidential too, and you probably as a supporters group head, you see some obscure tweets or you hear some obscure or gossip, for lack of a better word, and you're like, how do you balance that as like someone who's important in a supporters group?
Um, I mean, you kind of have to learn from mistakes. What I learned is that if someone in power is telling you information that you have no business knowing, that there's probably an ulterior motive. You know, both. Yeah, I mean, I have text messages of things that I had absolutely no business of knowing, and then looking back, it's like, oh, I was being manipulated. So now you kind of get uh, gun shy, um, as far as trust. So yeah, it's a bit difficult to navigate. And whatever, I mean, rumors online, you just kind of have to tune out. Um, I don't know
Yeah. Yeah,
quite
no,
how to
it's
put it. It's not easy. Um, but that's where the community part of it comes in. We
yeah.
have a Discord that has really helped folks kind of deal with some of the tougher situations.
So do you talk amongst yourselves around it, or and how, and there's a lot of strong personalities in these kind of supporters groups, right? I mean, that's kind of part of the fun is, you get these fervent people who really, like enjoy getting into the thick of what it is to support athletics and a group of people on the pitch, but also a group of people having fun. What, how do you how do you navigate differences of opinions on that kind of thing? Well,
Um,
so you hear something and someone's, wants to investigate further.
you let folks talk it out as much as, up to a certain point. Um, I mean, we have thankfully a pretty good group that doesn't get too into the weeds on, the personal life gossip of players and what have you. Um, if something like that pops up, we try to be quick to shut it down and just kind of remind people like, look, this isn't the place. Um, But, if people have differences, we just let them talk it out. I mean, folks are, once in a while somebody can get a little out of line, but there's enough folks to bring them back down, and just let them know what kind of community this is. And if it's not for them, maybe, they shouldn't be here.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds normal adult New York, New Jersey behavior, that we have ways of just talking things through and making our arguments, and either the arguments land or they don't land. But I'm glad that there are ways of processing, these various things, because I know when I had heard things about, I read the Yates report, I read some of these reports, and they were horrifying, absolutely horrifying. And it would have been nice to have, a gang of people rather than just Twitter to support me through it. Yeah. Jonathan Holly? Oh, okay, go ahead.
Okay. I like the online communities can be very toxic, but if you do it right, that they can be truly life-changing, which I hope that's what we've accomplished.
What do you wish, what would you like supporters groups to do or be able to do? This is very, very, very broad, but if you could have your 3 wishes, it doesn't have to be 3 wishes, but if you could have some wishes about how supporters groups function or how clubs function or anything like that, like what would be ideal for you if you could change some things in the league and supporters groups and how they function?
I mean, transparency would be one. Teams, I mean, Gotham is getting better at that. The league is getting better at that, but yeah, transparency is first and foremost. Oh boy.
I think there's a lot of
Not
ways
good
in
with-
which, if we want to talk about the league,
Yeah.
sort of rather than just supporters groups, well, I think there's some similarities between the A-League women and the NWSL, but one that I think does affect player welfare in a way is there's this drafting and trading scheme where players don't really have a lot of say in where they play in a lot of ways. And I think that's quite a foreign idea to most of the rest of the football world. I mean, and this is the thing. It's like female footballers have particularly precarious working conditions because they don't get paid enough that they can just go somewhere where they're not getting paid or things like that. Like financially, they're precarious for sure, and that also stops people from speaking out. But at least there's some say in the rest of the football world. It's like, I do not want to play for X club, even if it's the only contract I'm offered, I'm not going, right? Whereas with the trading and the drafting, I think it's kind of bizarre that that's how it happens. I think it's sort of supposed to be some kind of evening out the league thing, but I just feel like that's such a trap of like making people stuck in working conditions that aren't appropriate.
Yeah, it's a very American thing. I mean, I think a lot of us would like to abolish the draft. I think, and I'm not as familiar of the situation outside the U.S., but college soccer is huge here. So that's sort of where the draft emanates from. But yeah, I think we're all kind of done with it, especially at the expansion draft. The good news on that is that there's now a CBA, and free agency, which is how Gotham got all these players.
Yeah, let me explain a little bit about that. So the CBA is kind of, the document that was put together and agreed upon by the league, by the players union, And it's like a set of rules. And so they just didn't want to abolish this sort of contract situation at an instant and have it a free for all. So it was based on tenure, who could be a free agent and how long they've been in the league. And that it's kind of a half solution to it. But right now, the teams that are attractive with their management are getting the players. And Jen, what suddenly made the last team in the league last year attractive?
Well, championship. Championship.
And Jonathan's gonna jump in. He's ready.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Lynn Williams, Ellie Krieger, Gina Neiswanger, Midge Purse, Juan Carlos Amoros. Shall we keep going? I mean, all of these things. It's from where I sit, it's the culture. And when you win, people want to be in that. People want to be in a winning culture.
And Yael Averbush.
Oh my God. Yeah, she's been working miracles. But probably the best hire this club has ever made.
Tell us what an effective GM looks like in women's soccer.
I mean, it's Yael, right? She's a former player, so she knows their struggles and what they want. She's from New Jersey, right? So she knows this market. She's smart as hell. Yeah, it's and I don't know if you read anything that came out today, but a lot of it's not, free agency isn't always about who's offering the most money. It is about this culture that was that's being created, and a lot of it comes down to investment. I mean, we've never had a coaching staff this large. And they're doing scouting, they have people running statistics. It's investment is a huge piece of it, and Gotham is finally not only bringing the investors in and spending the money.
No, that's exciting. I mean, it gives us hope. The Knicks are in last place last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it, John.
Just a little side clip. It's interesting because when we decided to, we're doing some work around women's football. We thought, we'll pick up a team in the NWSL. We'll write about them. So we're doing match previews. So I was like, yeah, there's this team. Oh, and this young lady, Gina Neiswanger, she's great. And Denise is like, who? Rookie of the year. Rookie of the year. That's who, Denise. That's who.
And you know what? We only had we drafted 2 players last year, as opposed to years before where we drafted 5-6 players. We had 5-6 draft picks, and maybe 2 or 3 would make the roster and get no playing time. Whereas last season we flipped draft picks for players and allocation money. We're just making smarter choices.
So there are not really academies in the sense of everywhere else, because I think the college system kind of picks up the work of the academies. I mean, is that the case, or are there pros and cons to that? There's, in the past, a lot of young people from Australia and New Zealand who were playing football would go to the college system, and there are definitely advantages to the college system, particularly getting an education. But there are also disadvantages compared to actually just going and starting a professional career right away. How do you feel about the college system and the role that it plays in the NWSL?
I'm not a big fan of it. The NCAA, which is the organization that rules over all college sports, it isn't great. I would love to see an academy system on the women's side. I think it's been great on the men's side for MLS. I'm a Red Bulls fan, and they have, one of the best academies in the country. You get these homegrown players. which, I mean, we love when we sign somebody from this area. It's just gives us a little extra boost. Um, but yeah, I'm not a big like I have no problem with the U18s, the kids that go right from high school to the pros. I don't think yeah, I mean, it's a different game. I mean, they count down the clock, there's unlimited substitutions, they're not playing the game that they're playing at the pro level. So if we could get an academy system where you can build kids into your system, your playing style from the start, I mean, that would be huge.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I think the Phoenix has a very good academy, but on both the girls and the boys side, and it makes a big difference with the pipeline coming in and who they're discovering from this little country. So, a few last questions. Where were you during the Women's World Cup this past year?
Uh, Sleeping. The U.S. game. I think the two U.S. games are on. While I was awake, I watched. But to be honest, I was asleep.
Yes.
I look. I'm club over country. Not that I don't support the U.S. national team. I do. There's games in the area. I absolutely go in the supporter section. I'm a member of SAMRS, which is a national team supporters group. But I wasn't getting up at that time. I just couldn't. We had several members in New Zealand and Australia, though.
Oh, neat.
But
We felt a bit of glee.
next year when you watch, yeah,
I was going to say, we felt a bit of glee that everybody else was having to suck up doing the 2 o'clock in the morning games, because over here, we're usually the ones that cop that. So,
Fair enough.
a lot of you right.
Fair enough. I mean, and bless you for getting up, when the games are over here. I'm old and can't do that.
well, next year you'll only just need to go down the road to New York to the Gotham match, because I tell you, it's going to be stacked. But carry on.
What do you, again, another fun question. What do you think of the Club World Cup idea?
I love it. I've been wanting it for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's the best team in the world?
Nothing.
Nah, it's the Knicks, mate.
Cool. Any other fun questions? Yeah. Oh, bring it, Jonathan.
So how pre-written or how pre-scripted are the chants and the drums? Because you're standing looking at so I take it you're looking at the crowd or at the players when you're drumming. I mean, that must take a bit of concentration and practice. That's the other thing, practice. We're trying to get Holly to be more engaged with the chanting bit. So we're encouraging her to practice.
Yeah, so I'm not a trained drummer in the slightest. I learned by watching other people, and just picking up sticks and doing it. I mean, we have a set list, not that we do it in order every game, but we have a chant sheet, and we have a channel in our Discord where we discuss new songs and what have you. We have our capos, and yeah, it's just, we have a lot of stuff that we've tried and failed, and you just kind of have to just do it, and it's okay to borrow songs from other clubs, or we all steal from each other, so.
You'll probably have to make up a song about Crystal Dunn. I mean,
Yeah,
one
we're
signing.
working on it. We're working on it.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 words rhyme with Dunn, so I think
Oh,
you're good with that. And you've been ripping them from OL Reign with Rose Lavelle and
Oh,
Sonnet. Yeah, congratulations on that. I mean,
thank you.
those are 2 hilarious people. Actually, 3 hilarious people between Dunn, Sonnet, and Lavelle. I mean, they're funny people.
We already have Kelly O'Hara. It's just going to be maximum chaos. Maximum chaos. I mean, letting them loose in New York City.
And just a few things, like what are your feelings at the end of a game, after you've done, and like how, how do you, what's the cool thing about being a supporter?
I mean, it's the people around you, the people next to you. We say we're your instant soccer friends. We've had so many people that come in by themselves, um, and they get stuck in because they know the same people are going to be there week in, week out. So just seeing everybody, no matter what the outcome is, you spent a day at this beautiful stadium with your friends making noise, whether we win or lose, you kind of take that to heart. I mean, by the end of the game, I'm exhausted. If you did your job right, you have no voice, your hands hurt. Um, but like, I mean, when you win it all, it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Yeah, I bet it was. Were you there?
Oh, absolutely.
The final, cool.
Oh, yeah.
That was great. That was down in San Diego. So I think that's a beautiful place to leave it. I know, Flight of the Knicks, we are a very inclusive group. We've always, a lot of the people who are at the fringes, have kind of found us. And Little Corner of Yellow, I mean, they're always going to be supporting the away team over in Australia post-COVID. And so we get it. It means a lot to have community as a thing at these matches. And thank you. I know you've been doing this a long time, Jen. I've seen you on Twitter a very long time, and you've been through thick and thin with Gotham FC. And again, that was our little adopted team, in the NWSL from the Flight of the Knicks. Even when you were bad, we adopted.
We appreciate it.
And appreciate your time tonight. It's 11 o'clock at night in New York, and we really, really appreciate your time here today. Anything?
I just want to thank you so much for having me. We appreciate your support. Love when you pop up in our mentions. Yeah, I mean, it's a global game, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Right.
Thank you.
So we'll wrap it there. As you once again, as Denise said, thanks to Jean. If you're wanting to find Cloud9, you can have a look either at the Gotham FC site. They have a little link there to the Cloud9 webpage, independent fan group, just because it's on the go. Also, lots of Cloud9 on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, Cloud9, fantastic people. Yeah, we're also all over the place. You'll find us on socials. Just look up Fly the Knicks. We appreciate the time. Jen, we wish you very well, and we also wish well to Cloud9 and the ongoing contribution and commitment to professional women's football in the US. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, and we'll see you all again soon. Ka kite.